wait time. I gotta say ding 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 for a little thing. Ding 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 ding. Called DisOrganized play. Ding 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 ding. We love them Dungeons and Dragons. Ding 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 ding. And we're gonna take a sip from our flagons. Ding 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 ding. Bop 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 bop. Are we on now? Is that?
Yeah.
Did we do it?
Yeah, you're totally.
I thought that was pretty good for the new year, as a matter of fact. For something like bluegrass, putting me through the ringer. Although, I'm glad, I ruled out rap and heavy metal, which are both tried and true favorites. I did. I said, what theme song style would you enjoy that's not rap and not heavy metal?
Well, you prefaced it by what would you enjoy?
Yes.
If you had done those.
What would you enjoy? Is that what I said? What would you enjoy? Hey, everyone. I'm Tom Lommel. I'm your host. I'm your dedicated dungeon master.
Sure.
That's there's a certain way of interpreting the word dedicated to make that ring true. Welcome, yes, Happy New Year to everyone. This is our illustrious leader, producer, and my co-host here for DisOrganized Play, Mr. Dom Zook.
Hi.
You've seen him. He's the guy who runs all the buttons and wires and things. This is our new overlay that I put together. It's my idea. If you like it, I want big thumbs up in the chat. If you don't like it, you can tell Dom that he's right, that it crowds us. It's too crowded. You can't see enough of Tom's face. That's what my mom would say. So yes, happy 2018. Welcome back, everyone, into this brand new year. We've got all kinds of brand new things about to lunge forth from our collective cauldron of imagination. Dom was like, what is he going to say next? I wasn't sure myself. Hey, so for those of you who are not familiar with how this show works, on Tuesdays, I get together and talk GMing advice and do my GM prep for the game that I run on Wednesdays, which is called the Iron Keep Chronicles, which is a D&D 5e game, which you can watch here every Wednesday starting at 8 p.m. Pacific here on Saving Throw Show. And then on Thursdays at 2 p.m. Pacific, we get back together and talk about what actually happened.
Yeah.
Tuesday's what we planned.
What went wrong? What went right?
Thursdays is what actually happened. And that's fine. That's the way the game works. So for those of you who think the GM is the brilliant arbiter and seer of all that may go forth in your session, and you come home and go, wow, how did he know that we were going to do that? A lot of the times I didn't know. I didn't. So yeah. All right. So we are having bad weather here in Los Angeles. It is raining a lot, and honestly,
or good weather, depending on
depending upon where you are. Yeah. If you are north of us, up the 101, the 101 has been closed entirely. There's a natural gas fire happening right now. They've closed all lanes of the 101.
Great.
Yeah, so there's a lot of bad things happening, not immediately in our vicinity, but...
Thank you, Modern Chow. Thanks so much.
Thank you
That's
for
awesome.
helping test our bits functionality.
Thank you for the bits.
And for giving us bits.
Yeah.
So, cool, 50 bits, awesome. All right, so you get my GMing thoughts, you get to ask questions about the game, the ongoing campaign, etc., 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 and we've got a lot of exciting things to tackle today, and also for this next forthcoming chapter of the Iron Keep Chronicles. So let's run down our list of topics today, shall we? Why Expedition to the Barrier Peaks? We're going to talk about why I chose this adventure, why I wanted to... I've had this in the queue for a while now. Why was that? We're going to talk about the original adventure. We're going to talk about updating and revising it. As anyone who is even a short-term fan of the show knows, I cannot touch a published adventure without screwing around with it. So that's that. And then we're going to talk about what's actually going to happen this week. Right? So we are going to talk quite a bit about Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. We're going to be talking about it quite a bit over the course of the next probably 2 to 3 months. But I don't want to give you the impression that we're going to immediately dive into that adventure tomorrow night. Right. We need to have some transition time.
Okay.
Because we came out of an arc, and there's a few loose ends that we need to wrap up. But that's that. Yes.
Yeah.
Talk about the table. We have a table.
Yes, it is a table. Thank you, we've been saving up for a while to get a different table. My table, as everyone knows, I am extremely possessive over and love it to death. But it was handmade.
It was yours?
It was mine and handmade for me by Shipwrights. You don't get better than that. It's a pretty damn good table, okay?
Wait a minute. Is Shipwrights a company, or do you mean
literally people who build
We're
ships.
Shipwrights.
Yes.
I don't know why that had a 1940s kind of like.
Well, that's kind of how they were. Scottish Shipwrights, actually.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, Mr. Zook, we've got your table for you.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was like. However, we've been saving up for a while now because we wanted to get some better angles and stuff and do some different things, which you'll see hopefully tonight if you tune in for the Flash Gordon one shot that we're running. And so Carolina Gaming Tables, we worked with them and got a table through them. So this has been basically a year in the making, and it's here now. You may not see a whole lot of it on streams actually, unless we do an overhead. But yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it's nice. We're gonna change the way that the stream cameras and stuff are set up too. So you'll see some different things tonight if you tune in, or tomorrow night if you tune in. But we're going to 2018, and we had a break. It's our chance to do a little bit of an upgrade, whatever you want to call it. It's a time to look at everything with fresh eyes after the break and come back and tackle things anew. So. There you go. Yeah, I'm not sure that the players are going to remember what happened last time that they played. However, so here's the thing about Expedition of the Barrier Peaks is it takes place in this remote location, and somehow I need to transition them from Waterdeep, where they certainly remember that they are, out to the middle of nowhere, which is where Barrier Peaks takes place, right? I don't know that I'll go, we're playing ostensibly in the Forgotten Realms, and Expedition of the Barrier Peaks is set in World of Greyhawk, canonically, so, we're gonna have to do some fudgery anyhow. It's already sort of been set up, but we need to have some sort of transition episode to get from, okay, well, let's put a bow on what's happened in Waterdeep, and how do they get out, right? We'll talk about that later on in the show. I like that you're already brainstorming on it, but let's get some background going before we chug on the old memory sticks and try. It was, I want to say, about a month ago that we played. Pretty close.
Yeah, pretty close.
So,
pretty close.
That's fine. That's fine. Yeah. Yes, they just get abducted. Gray aliens come down from a silvery spaceship. Hit them with the stun gun, abduct them, and then they wake up inside the ship for the Expedition of the Barrier Peaks. So, why did I choose this? Partly, I think the main reason that I chose Expedition of the Barrier Peaks is 5e has seen a real capitalization of taking classics from the AD&D canon, whether that's Ravenloft or Against the Giants, even Tales from the Yawning Portal, taking those AD&D classic adventures and then rebooting, updating them, reconfiguring them, however you want to portray that, but certainly doing a big hardcover remix on the adventure and doing basically a revision and an update, right? But keeping many of the themes and elements in place from the original adventure. So I looked through what had been offered, and I wanted to, number one, stay in that same vein of adapting, updating, revising a classic AD&D adventure. But number two, I want to do something that wasn't already on the radar, right? I guess if I was going to be lazy about it, I might go back and do Out of the Abyss. Mm-hmm. That's a fun and interesting adventure. I played through it, so I have some idea of how the plot is supposed to go and how it played out. But then I have some ideas about how I would run it differently, etc. Right? All of that stuff. Yeah, but Curse of Strahd has been played extensively on stream. They're playing tons of different Tomb of Annihilation games on stream. So we want to offer you something different, but still in that vein. So I looked at what was up there and I said, Expedition of the Buried Peaks is a classic adventure that has not been touched. Let's bring it into the Iron Keep world and see what we can do with it. So that was the main thing. Also, I love so many elements of it. I was going to talk about this when we got to the history, but
Okay, well, that's,
no,
we can do
no,
both.
here we
can
are.
do both.
No, here's the thing, Dom, is I like a lot of room in the frame for my face and my body, and I feel like this is really crowding, the camera a lot, because this is very much an action-oriented show where I do a lot of big gestures, and it's important that, the frame just live as much as possible, and we not have like some weird static element just infringing. And yet he still lets me come in every week. 3 times a week, actually.
Yeah.
Spends more time with me than 90% of the other casts of our show. So also I like the idea of the sci-fi elements getting introduced into a fantasy world. That's obviously a big theme of Expedition of the Buried Peaks. All the weird monsters and all the unusual technology, the sci-fi technology, and that sort of stuff. So that appeals to me. If you've been following my work, like I love kind of post-apocalyptic kind of stuff in the vein of Gamma World, and so this is sort of as close as we can get without actually getting into a Gamma World type of scenario, like still keeping it D&D, because I wanted to also still keep it D&D.
Right.
So those were the reasons I chose. The final reason I chose this, and then I think I'm done talking about this, is I've never actually run this. I've started running it a little bit for one of my home games, but I've never played it, and I've never run through it.
That's exciting.
So it's interesting to look at it with a fresh set of eyes and think about like, oh, okay, well, what's this? Internet problems. You guys can fight through it. I know you can. If we have to stop the stream, we'll reboot it. But see what you guys can do on your end.
Yeah, I'm showing okay on our end, but I don't know.
Yeah. All right. So next thing, moving along. So we're going to talk about the original adventure. Now maybe it's gotten worse on eBay lately. I knew I was going to run this probably 3 or 4 years ago. The story behind this is my wife is like, I love science fantasy type of stuff. I love Gamma World. I really want to play Expedition of the Buried Peaks. And I'm like, I tell you what, I'll run it for you, and that'll be our D&D game. Well, then I noticed that it was levels 8 to 12, and I felt like I had to run a run-up campaign. And by the time we got to level 7, there were some other real-life things that intruded, and we haven't actually, we've played 1 session of Expedition of the Buried Peaks. So, in 3 years of marriage, I'm sorry, darling, I have failed you horribly on that front. But 3-4 years ago, I picked this up on eBay for cheap. It's by no means a mint copy, but this is one of the original printings. I don't know how you would tell which reprint it is or whatever. Is it this 8? Is that what that means? I don't know.
It should say. Usually it says.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Oh, so there's the original version. I have that. I also bought it in electronic format in PDF. And then for those of you who are familiar with sort of the between times between 4th and 5th edition, Wizards of the Coast did a lot of reprints of AD&D stuff to sort of keep the cash flow at least sort of trickling in. And they did this very nice hardcover called Dungeons of Dread, which encapsulates 4 classic modules. It's almost kind of a Tales of the Yawning Portal sort of precursor, right? Mm-hmm. So it's got Tomb of Horrors, White Plume Mountain, Expedition of the Buried Peaks, and then Lost Caverns of Tsoja-Canth, right? So those are in here, and they did go through and brush everything up and make sure that it was legible in a black and white format. Now, why is that important? I'm gonna show you that right off the bat, which is, oh, it's raining outside, everyone.
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear it.
You can't hear, but it is drumming out there. My iPad went to sleep. So if we look at, we do a side-by-side comparison here. I don't know if our overhead
I think
cam-
the overhead got jostled because it's not.
Did it not? Is it not?
Yeah, it's. Oh, because we moved the table.
We moved the table.
Yeah.
There we
Well,
go.
you could
Just perfect.
here
We
do this real quick.
lift it up like
There we
that.
There we go.
So if we look at these as a side-by-side comparison, this original blue map is terrible. It is like almost illegible, especially in this opening area where we're showing that it's an unlit area. I don't know if you can see that part of it. It's an unlit area that has a turbo lift or a drop chute in it. And everything is like just like one slight variation of blue, right? So it is awful, especially on this inside cover.
This is the best thing though. You can't. I don't think you could even tell this on stream. This is an unlit area. This is a dimly lit area.
Yeah.
And this is a brightly lit area. So you cannot tell between dimly lit and unlit, which
Yeah.
is a huge, huge thing.
Right. The grayscale version of this is actually legible, right? So that's one key advantage I have found to using this hardcover version of the adventure is I can look at this map and actually read it. So those are of the three versions that I have. This one is actually maybe the best because even the PDF is color and it's not a great scan, right? I wish it was this brushed up scan. Like you can't really read. Okay, that's a meeting room. A lot of times there's all these doors are indicated like by what color they are, and you can't tell exactly what character that's supposed to be. It's all a lot more legible on this brushed up version, the reissue version of the book.
James, you're not wrong. That the blue was somewhat of a way to counteract piracy of these.
That you then couldn't photocopy it, right?
But
that's great. All right, so
Didn't last
yes,
long.
that is exactly right. What was going on, but for better or for worse, there are some. Let's back up. All right, so we're going to talk about the history of the adventure. These are just the two different versions that I have, right? I like this one, but let's back up. So this was the tournament adventure for Origins 2 that took place in what year? Dom, I'm going to let you maybe Google that. Origins 2. Somebody in chat can Google when Origins 2 was. So that's how old this thing is, right? And it betrays its birth as a tournament module in the entire premise of the thing, right? So the basic premise is you're sent up by the Grand Hootie Ha to go and investigate why these weird monsters are coming out of this particular cave high up atop this mountain in the Barrier Peaks. And in the course of investigating, you go into the cave, the door shuts and locks behind you, and at that point it becomes a race against
1976.
time. Yeah, so 76. So it was 50 years ago? 52 years ago?
I'm not that old.
All right,
41 years ago.
41 years ago.
40, almost 42. 42 years ago.
You're pretty old, Tom.
Yeah. I'm like, what does that make you? If you're thinking I'm 50.
Huh? What? I'm the same age as Eric is, whatever age he is.
Yep.
35?
Yep. You're like Tommy Wiseau.
I'll get my chance at the Golden Globes, just wait.
Yeah.
Hey, I remember when I moved to town, Tommy Wiseau was the biggest joke in Hollywood. And everybody was literally like, hey, have you seen this guy who's got this like goofy billboard on Sunset of his own face? It's this thing called The Room. Mm-hmm. And then tons of people would go to the Laemmle, because he had rented the Laemmle for this extended run of his movie, and go and watch it and laugh in the back through the whole thing. And the guy made money hand over fist.
Yep.
And here we are 12 years later. And did they win a Golden Globe? I don't know, but nominated, right? So, yes, thank you, Addicted Decoy. We're neither of us over 30.
No, Eric is the oldest person.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah, Eric is 52. He's as old as this adventure is.
Right.
So, to bring it back around, this is a tournament module, so you basically got locked inside the ship. Your job was to try and escape the ship. That's it. That's what it was. Along the way, you encountered weird alien monsters. You discovered strange and interesting technology, which invariably would blow up and backfire in your face. But you could walk out of this adventure with a lightsaber, right? That's one thing that could happen. The other thing that's notable about this book, or about this adventure, is that normally you got a 32-page adventure, like this, and that was it, right? When you bought an AD&D adventure, you got an inside, a cover that had a map inside, and then you got a 32-page adventure, and that was it for you. Congratulations, you did it. The great thing about Expedition to the Barrier Peaks is, number one, there's a couple different maps, right? So you got a whole extra set of, yes, laser sword, to be correct. This definitely was never intended to be a lightsaber.
No.
Yeah. Actually, in 76, had Star Wars come out at the point?
Well, a year away.
All right. That doesn't mean but they released it in 80, right? So they could have included that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you got a whole extra page of maps because that's how big and sprawling the complex is. But then, most notably, and one of the things that drew me into this adventure is you got a whole booklet of illustrations, right? So when they go in this room, show them this. When they go in this room, and I believe there are 2 color illustrations in the middle. There are. I don't know, there might be 4. Robots.
Get your robots.
A weird jungle scene. Another weird, well, that's a swamp scene. And then finally, the old Errol Otis Froggy Moth, one of my favorite monsters. I love the Froggy Moth. So it also became an iconic adventure because of the Errol Otis artwork on the cover. You know, adventures with laser pistols and whatnot, as well as a lot of the Errol Otis illustrations within. And I think D. Sutherland did a few of the illustrations as well. I'm sure it says on the front, but yeah. So it came with this really. The wonderful thing about it was like it came with props. I don't know who would do this, but you would cut these things out like they're slightly perforated to cut out and show and use as handouts for your players. So it came with an entire booklet of illustrations, and in total there's 63 different illustrations. So I think that's pretty cool too, right? So that was another thing that made it iconic. So, but that's the basic. That's sort of the quick history, and you played it, and then later your DM was like left to figure out like, oh, okay, like how am I going to screw them out of their power armor or whatever? And usually it ran dry, right? So that was the best way to overcome any of the technology that they got. Oh, well, you're out of power now.
Yeah.
Too bad. So it's like any magic item that has charges. So that's a little bit on the history of this thing. So there's definitely some very cool, iconic. I don't know enough about the history of AD&D modules to say, oh, well, is this super innovative? I felt like it broke ground. It certainly was a bridge between Gamma World and D&D and whatnot. And it was one of the major science fantasy adventures, right? As opposed to something like, I don't know, like Through the Looking Glass and The Land Beyond the Magic Mirror, which was like a spin more on Alice in Wonderland, right? This was also kind of a genre-bending type of adventure, right? So, yeah, there's all kinds of ways to screw the players with the technology. Honestly, it's one of those things, it's got a little bit of a Call of Cthulhu feel, which was like, I don't know, should we pick this thing up? No. The other thing I want to note in terms of things that I consider iconic about it is when you discovered something. I've looked through these. There were a bunch of new monsters that got introduced in this adventure, but when you looked through this thing, there was a complicated set of flowcharts. Depending upon how complex the tech was and how lethal it was, you would start at this box and then you would start rolling dice and you would modify those dice based on what their intelligence was, whether they had found something similar, whether somebody had explained how to use the thing, all that sort of stuff. And then you'd start rolling up and down and following this chart around, telling them like, oh no, you're not sure, oh you burned a charge, it doesn't do anything, oh you accidentally shot yourself with the thing. Like, discharge person is hurt, discharge item destroyed. No, you actually like made it through and finished it. So I love these flowcharts. I don't think they're very well done for the modern era, but I love that idea. And it was a really like fascinating sort of like mini game that happened within the adventure of, okay, pause, you found this shining gold orb, what does it do? What's your intelligence? Have you been in this room? And then let's start rolling and see what happens next.
It's good for something that the players would have absolutely no basis in understanding, right? And
right.
You're creating the game equivalent of fiddling with something until you figure out what it does.
Yeah, and it also, I think one of the big challenges with this adventure, whether you run it as written or you start messing around with it as I invariably am going to do, one of the big challenges is to keep the players from metagaming. Oh, that's clearly a pistol. That's a laser pistol. That's a, whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. Like describing things in a way that both you, as you present it to the players, and they, as they role play their characters, don't go, oh, I know it's a computer screen and a keyboard, but okay, so I press on the different little tile stones. Do they make a noise? What are they? Trying to facilitate that level of immersion when it's so tempting to go, oh well, look, it's a phone, right, or whatever it is. And I think that these flowcharts, these weird little flowcharts, were a way for the DM to tell the players, no, you don't know that because this is how it's going to be adjudicated. This is how it's going to be decided. It's not just going to be you describing what you do and then, oh, conveniently, you happen to describe that you point the thing at the wall and fire a bolt into the air, right? Instead, it's much more left to the rules mechanics to go, well, then you start turning it around, you look, It's like that classic shot from Star Wars where Luke picks up the lightsaber and looks straight down the barrel of it, right? So I think that's certainly an iconic element and one that I want to reinvent and reincorporate into our playthrough of it. So along those lines, let's talk about updating and revising it, because I think there are some things that in 1980 were interesting and amazing kind of points of it was a great the premise of you're going to adventure inside a spaceship was good enough in 1980. Mm-hmm. Fast forward 61 years to the present day.
Yep.
And I don't know that necessarily holds up on its own. It's a great concept, but the premise is you're locked inside and you need to get out. Okay, well to me that's not strong enough for my home game, I don't think. But I also know that it's not strong enough for our actual play here on the stream, right? I don't think. So why do I say that? What's missing? If your premise is you're locked in, you got to get out, and everything in between is really just there for to facilitate that, right? Or to be an obstacle to keep you from getting out. So it's that whole balance of like, can we kill enough of the alien vegapygmy things that we can find the right card that will open the door that leads us to the shaft that pops the thing, and we hack the robot to open the thing, right? I don't think that's a strong enough concept. Maybe it is for 2 sessions of play. I don't think it's strong enough for a real, like, interesting exploration of, like, let's go to this place and meet these people, you know, or whatever, right? Yeah, and that is one of the ideas, you know, as Wraith42 points out, some of these key ideas that are in there of the key cards or the zoo animals that have gotten away or the robots are malfunctioning, those are great ideas, but the way that their purpose within the adventure is not particularly interesting. It does not evoke a lot of story or character development. Because if you look at those things and you go, okay, well, the key cards, well, that's just an obstacle that doesn't really have a whole lot of inherent meaning to it, other than, like, let's find the right color, because we don't want them stolen and taken away. The robots, they're all nuts. Let's just destroy them when we see them. Can we take these things on? No, yes, no, great. The aliens escaped from the zoo animals, okay, let's attack and kill them. Like, this is definitely, like, has a very hack and slash bent to it, which is fine for the time period, is not fine for me, my game, the way that I want to take this to the table and what they can do with it, right? So that's the flip side of it, is I as the DM go, look at my players, what do they want to do? And one thing that I've learned from this table, and I don't know if this is true for your table at home, I want you to think about it though, is that when given the chance to either explore the plot or develop their characters, this table will go after developing their characters. They will hook into the thing that's personal for their PC and work on that, as opposed to going into, like, okay, let's follow this plot line and ignoring whatever their character angle is. Now maybe that's because they're entertainers and performers and actors, and that's something that they naturally gravitate toward. Maybe it's because that's what brings them enjoyment, fulfillment of the game, their personality type, whatever. But I want to caution you as DMs out there that this may be something that happens at your table too, where you're like, oh, well, they just hook into the plot and then we'll move on. And then all of a sudden you get to the table and you find out, oh no, they really want to talk to this random NPC. Why is that? Oh, it's because it's developing a moment of character for them, right? Yeah, so I have a bunch of different ideas for how we're going to change and alter the, remix the scenario, revise, update it, whatever you want to call it. But that's my big number one issue here, is the premise of you're locked in, fight your way out, is great for a tournament at Origins, or, you know, a couple shot session where, you know, you throw it at your party and they kind of like get some cool loot and they fight some alien monsters and then they get out and it's over and they move on to whatever heroic story thing is actually going on. But in terms of the way it's set up, it's very much set up as a standalone hack and slash adventure. Bore your way, not bore as in boring, but like drill your way from deck A down to level 5 or whatever it is. And you can see that if you flip through and you look at the encounters, it's laid out in a super confusing way. That is definitely one artifact of the time, is that this adventure is, if you crack it open and you read through it, especially the first level, there are a bunch of named rooms that are literally named: library, laboratories, and sometimes there's like sub rooms underneath those: lab A, lab B, lab C, game rooms, da-da-da-da-da. And then there are actually numbered encounters within that. So when you're looking at the map, it's kind of like, what do I look at to figure out what's what? And then sometimes the numbered encounters are just something that happens in a hallway or whatever, right? But the layout of this thing is extremely confusing and dense. But if you go through and you look at this stuff, there's 9 doppelgangers here. There's a tribe of Vegapygmies that lives in this end, and there's a tribe of veggie pygmies who live in this end, and they're slightly different, but it has absolutely zero information about how to role play the chief, what their motivations are, how they survive. Mm-hmm. There's some very weird kind of continuity or plausibility things where it's like the veggie pygmies have no interest in looting these areas, so they're largely intact. But they've been here for how long? Like why haven't they taken this stuff? Why are they not curious about it? I mean, that's fine. How come nobody on the lower levels has come up and defeated them or whatever?
I ran into very similar things, and anytime I think that you're going to take an old Gygax adventure or any old AD&D adventure like this module, you're going to run into that it was built to be hack and slash.
Right.
That's what.
And I'm not bagging on that.
Yeah, there's certainly not an issue with it. But I did the same thing with Horror on the Hill, if you remember, and I ran through with you guys in proficiency check, and we were updating it. The thing that got me was there was no purpose to anything. You literally were we're going to drop you on this hill, and your players are just going to automatically
go fight, right? I mean, they need
fighting.
XP. Yeah. They need gold pieces.
Right. And so that's very video game, which is great for the people who want to do that. But yeah, like Tom is saying, for this table, that's not ideal. And so...
But what that does is it provides us with opportunities, right? And the other thing that's interesting to me about this adventure is that it's got a very 1980 kind of take, really more of like a 1976 kind of take on what a starship is. And science fiction, I don't know if it's just advanced further or technology has advanced further that it pushes it more. But there are none of the robots have a personality. And the computer is just something that you manipulate. It certainly does not if you look at modern science fiction, it doesn't have a personality, it doesn't respond to you, it's not there to serve you, it's not there to subvert you or anything like that. It's just like, oh, if you push the wrong buttons, then malfunctions happen.
Yeah.
It's a very kind of classic take on science fiction. I think we could do...
Oh, thank you so much.
Hey, not like this 100 robot? I don't know what's happening. Somebody cheered in for some bits. Is that what happened?
Eplecat.
Thank you. So what it provides for us is some opportunities to do some updates and revisions, right? So let's just talk briefly about that, and then we'll talk about our transition time. I don't want to. I know it's our first episode back, but also because the weather's so terrible, I don't want to run particularly over. To Christian Linky's point, I do think if you take City of the Gods and some of that old Blackmore material, there is an opportunity to explore, what would it be like if this advanced technology colony ship came down, landed, and then interacted with the people around it, right? So a couple of different things that I think we should consider when we update this thing. Big one for me is, what is the role of the computer, right? Because I think, number one, let's give this thing a personality. Let's give it something that that the players can have an interaction with, a role-playing interaction with, right? And that's the thing, right? It's going to be very difficult. We're going to be walking that line where sometimes we're going to cross over into Paranoia, the role-playing game Paranoia kind of territory where the computer is your friend. And then sometimes what I'd like to focus on is more of a realistic, dramatic interaction with the computer, right? Not necessarily realistic, but a more dramatic where maybe it's not played for laughs so much. Maybe it's more played. I think there's opportunities to play for laughs, but I think when you look at this situation, I have to imagine that this ship has been stuck here for 1,000 years or something like that, or 500 years or whatever it is.
Yeah, at least.
And there's something very depressing about that, right? There's something just extremely grim about this ship that has been buried in this mountain somehow for 500 years. and no one has really gotten out, and no one has really gone in. Like, why is that? And then what's going on? And what is this? What is either the decay or the evolution that's happening? A couple things. The big question you need to ask yourself when you're sitting down, or I had to ask myself in analyzing this thing and going, well, what's my angle? What's my angle of entry on this? Where's my vein to like crack this thing open and really develop something interesting? And the two things were, number one, what happened? Like, it was a virus, but it feels like, oh, it was a virus that, when you read the module, it's like either the virus took 2 weeks either it took 2 weeks in order to wipe out the ship, or it wiped everybody out in like a day and a half.
Right.
Like, it's very unclear. Supposedly this virus came through and made everybody insane and homicidal maniacs, and they took a few steps to stop it, but the timeline is very kind of like weirdly ambiguous, right? So number one is like, what happened? I'm not necessarily married to just the idea that this virus came, the ship crashed, and that was it, right? I don't think there's enough juice there, and I think it also kind of like is going to create a lot of questions like, well, how long have they been dead? Oh, about 500 years. And nobody's touched this thing in 500 years? Right. It's weird to me that the Vegapygmies have not at least used the human bones to start making weapons and tools and all that kind of stuff, right? And that's the other part of it, right? Is like sometimes the human beings got turned into Vegapygmies or what. Like, it's a very confusing set of circumstances that is not well explained. And to be fair, didn't need to be, right? Because you were supposed to play this in 4 hours and get out. And then when you're in the car on the way home, you'd go, oh yeah, I guess some of them must have been turned into Vegapygmies. And I don't know, there's a lot of guys who were dead there. What were they? Was it just a disease or something? So let's clarify that. I think there's some sort of like chaos, warp, or malfunction that came through and affected all of the people, but also sort of like affected the ship. Like the ship like maybe accidentally passed through a wormhole or something like that, right? So the number one question you have to ask yourself is, okay, well, what was the nature of the tragedy? And that leads you to what are the consequences that follow from that? And then when you ask yourself, okay, what's the nature of the computer? Is it an AI? What's the computer's response to that set of circumstances, right? Because here's a question that's not tackled, and I'm just gonna lay this out there for all of you to think about, and that's something that we're gonna explore at the table, right? But I wrote this down the other day when I was going through reading the adventure and just like brainstorming thoughts and whatnot. If you have an AI or a set of AIs who are charged with running this colony ship, we're gonna take 1,000 people and a bunch of cargo and deliver it to this planet and start a base there and set foot on this alien frontier and establish ourselves and flourish. If there's a catastrophic accident that wipes out all of your colonists, what is your response as the AI? Do you still have a purpose if everybody on the ship that you were explicitly written and created to safely guide to your destination, or at least a destination, if all of those people are dead, what do you have a purpose anymore?
I'm
asking you, dumb.
Yeah, I know. I'll come up with all the answers.
It's a deeply provocative philosophical question that you can address through play and interaction and role playing and discovery throughout the world, all that kind of stuff, right? Like, I think that's a fascinating question. Will it be satisfactorily answered? I don't know, but that's the point at which, okay, I've made some notes and some thoughts about what the catastrophe was, and now my window into everything that's happening on the ship and everything that the players could discover and interact with starts with, what's this AI's point of view? Like, what does it do when it finds itself? Does it know that everybody's dead? I kind of assume that it does, right? But yeah, so it leads you to all these possibilities that you're all throwing out in chat. Is like, okay, do I start growing new colonists? Do I somehow, okay, and then keep in mind that because of the disaster, the ship's systems are inherently unreliable. But there's that whole, like, another philosophical issue, and this is getting pretty deep, but there's a whole philosophical issue of perception. Does the computer know that it's making bad copies of colonists or whatever? You back that up a step and a half and you go, well, okay, so supposedly all of these people were humanoid, but the computer keeps making vegapygmies. What if they have bones, they leave behind a skeleton, but they were somehow plant-based life forms that were humanoid? Now that becomes interesting too, right? So there's a lot of, some, as Applecat says, there's a lot of different ways to go with this, right? There's so many different places, as Blind Seer points out, there's so many different places from sci-fi that we can kind of lift little elements. Sure. But what I don't want to do is like directly lift elements from 2001: Space Odyssey, or especially like Prometheus and Alien and all that kind of stuff. Like, I think that's a little too. Yeah, Pandorum is a very grim movie, but that is a great inspiration for my take on this. I didn't consciously think of it, but I have seen that movie. And have you seen it?
I haven't seen it. No.
So the basic idea is like this is the huge spoiler. So if you're gonna want to watch it, mute me for the next 2 minutes. But the basic premise is we're in this colony ship and we're traveling, and there's been an accident, and there's only like a handful of us left to like keep the ship on task and deliver it to the stars, right, or to the destination. And then somewhere along the line, and at the end of the second act, it's revealed, no, the ship crashed. It's never getting to where it's supposed to go. Everybody's basically dead. Oh. And I think there was something where like the ship. The surviving colonists think that the ship has been taken over by aliens, right? And it turns out they're just colonists who've become cannibals and are out to just like scratch whatever food they can out of the civilized ship.
Yeah.
No, it's called Pandorum. Yeah. So. So we have a bunch of very interesting questions to answer about, like, what about the doppelgangers? What about the vegapygmies? What about the robots? I have questions about, like, okay, do the robots know that they're malfunctioning? Or who's maintaining the robots? Are the robots actually, like, are they a stable entity within the ship? Or are they slowly, like, falling apart and nobody's fixing them, and they have to kind of, like, salvage pieces together to make themselves, like, to make one unit, you know? So really it's kind of like a war of attrition where, like, 3 robots die and so that 1 robot may go on and live, you know? Those become some interesting questions. The other piece of it that I want to address is there's all this between deck stuff that happens in the adventure, right? And so basically you have like the main floor, and then somehow you can access the maintenance areas of the ship. You can go into kind of the between decks where the power conduits are running and all that sort of stuff. Well, who lives there? What do they do? How are they involved in working, interacting with the ship and whatnot? So those are all sort of like avenues. I guess my main takeaway on this thing is take the boring, faceless NPCs and give them a purpose and a point of view and something that they're trying to accomplish and an attitude about how they're going to accomplish it. And then feed that into the players so that the players don't just have to like kill everybody.
Right.
Like a big thing for me is if the ship recognizes the party, the police robots, which are fairly lethal, maybe they don't want to kill somebody on sight, right? Like it's very easy to run those combats as like, okay, then he fires an electronet and then 7 grenades at you and give me 8 dex checks. It's time once again for my wife to check in while I'm streaming. So yeah, so that's where we that's my plan of attack with this thing. When I talk about updating or revising it, is rather than making it essentially a fortress where you crawl from the top tower down to the ground level and get out, I want it to be a living, breathing, interactive complex where people want things from each other or have their own attitude and may not necessarily just attack the party on site for no reason. And that, to me, the factionalization of the adventure is what's going to make it interesting.
Yeah.
Right? And there's so many different factions to be played off against each other, whether it's the computer versus its servitor robots, or the veggie pygmies versus each other, or whoever's in the maintenance deck versus the doppelgangers, honestly, like, once you play through the first 3 main levels and then you get down to the bottom deck, it's almost like they kind of give up on the adventure. Where the final levels down here is just like these. All right, go ahead and do the overhead cam because I just want to make a point about something. Yeah, it's not going to show up in the book. Oh, we did it. Level 1, right? Ridiculously complex, kind of like, okay, you go down the hallway for 80 feet, it turns to the left, you go another 40 feet, and you come to a T intersection, a square intersection, and there's a drop chute that goes up and it goes down, and there are, I don't know how many, 200 rooms on this map, right? Very maze-like type of configuration. Level 6, the final level. Theater, auditorium, what's the difference? I'm not sure. Cargo hold, cargo hold, cargo hold, cargo hold, cargo hold, cargo hold, lift, cargo hold, gymnasium, swimming pool. And we're done. Like, you can tell that by the time they got to level 6, it was like, I don't know what else. They go in the auditorium and they fight. They can meet with the 2 Shidu. Just open the door, let them out. I don't know. They've become bored with the premise by the time we get to level 6, and that's represented in the map, right? So, I understand that sort of shortcut. That's fine. I get it. Like, by the time you get to that point in the module, you don't want a million different rooms to go through. You just physically can't do it anymore. But I think there's more interesting opportunities for us in our actual play here on stream, things that we can bring to it. All right. So, briefly, I'd like to discuss a couple different issues that we have going forward in terms of transitioning from the events of last. And don't get me wrong, we're going to talk in much more detail about all these different things as we go forward, right? As I said, tomorrow night's session, this is a high-level overview. Let's dig into the premise a little bit and where we want to go with it. And tomorrow night's session is going to be really a transitional session and also kind of like catch up from the break type of session, going, here's a bunch of loose plot ends that were just sort of out there hanging. We're going to deal with those quick and then deal with those as quickly as we can and try to transition into your mission to go to the Barrier Peaks complex, right? So, some things that we need to follow up on. Xanathar is a big one, right? So we had this scene during the season finale, if you will, where Gingy betrayed the party to Xanathar and said they had the key to the Iron Keep, right? That needs to get played off somehow. Christian Licky points out that the levels are based on cruise ship levels. That's great. I don't take issue with what's there. And I've certainly drawn my fair share of inspiration from like real world sources. Doesn't mean that we have to play it out that way. Right? Also, there's just something a little implausible about, then we go to the swimming pool and the swimming pool's just fine. No, the swimming pool should be like either dry and then something lives down there and converted into this weird pit lair, or else it's overgrown with some
swampy
bizarre
yeah.
scum or whatever. So we have to deal with Xanathar in some way, shape, or form. I think, Xanathar has two things that are bothering him. One is he probably wants to get into the Iron Keep somehow. Two, he definitely wants this map that he's been cheated out of. And they cheated him out of it. I think he's going to have to make them like a difficult offer. Yeah. So those are two elements that we need to deal with. Number one, Gingy's betrayal. And then number two, what does Xanathar do with that information? And a big part of it is we need to get them from Waterdeep out onto their mission, right? But the way that we ended the session was essentially sort of like cementing Waterdeep as a home base, right? So at the end of the session, they were given Ailerod's Tower as this trophy. Like, you can make this your home if you want, or do what you want with it. Okay, well, that's another thing that we need to deal with. What are they going to do with Ailerod's Tower? Are they going to move into it? Are they going to explore it? Are they going to assume ownership of it? Are they going to rent it? Are they going to sell it? What's going to happen there? We need to also kind of like figure out a way to put a button on what's going on with we need to put a button on what's going on with Thon's dad, right? Because they have commissioned this potion, 10,000 gold pieces to sort of, you feed him the potion, it's a true resurrection spell, he comes back apparently uncursed. Oh no, it's an enthusiast army raid! Oh, thank you so much for coming on over, appreciate it. Too bad Dom's not here to enjoy the love. Thank you, enthusiast, we appreciate it. I was like squinting at the, like, what is happening? So, yes, it's good to see the enthusiast army here. So that needs to happen, and we need to put a little bit of a button on this whole idea of what happened at the end of the season finale, where the city was on fire and there were spiraling columns of flame and smoke, and there's this bizarre ritual, and Asmodeus showed up. It's like, you're here for my purples. I don't have much purple with me. I'm sorry. I have some purple dice. That's the best I can do. I don't know where Dom went. Maybe he went to move his car. You're here for my purples. I've got that. I've got that. I've got that. This new game table is really nice, by the way. I'm almost out of purples, you guys. There. Dom Zook.
Yes.
A raid is happening.
Oh god.
Oh god. The enthusiast army is here.
Oh.
They've come for our purples, and I know it's a lot of noise. Those are all of our purple dice.
I'm wearing purple.
You're wearing purple. Very good. I was sadly short on purple.
Welcome, enthusiast army. Welcome. Thank you, Amy. Thanks for that's Amy Dallin, our good friend. Thank you so much for joining us.
Is this felt? Is this
This is
felt?
velveteen.
Velveteen. Oh, I threw all the dice where you can't see them.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I'm bad. So, yeah. All right, well, thanks for the raid.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us.
So we need to put a little bit of a button on, like, okay, well, that was you foiled the events, congratulations. Laryl Silverhand is going to be forever in your debt, da-da-da-da-da, right? Also, we've got some new, we're gonna update Black Razor's stats, so I'm working that out with
You mean
Grav.
Dawn Razor?
You just spoiler alert. So yeah, that's happening, etc.
We're friends. We're friends here.
Yeah.
Only a few people are here, right?
And then the final thing. So those are the things that need to be wrapped up, and then we need to launch them in the direction of the barrier peaks where the ship is, right? Now, there are a couple different ways that we can do this. Xanathar could somehow prompt them to do it as payment or recompense, or maybe he hires them to like, okay, your job, since you're not going to give me the map, then I want you to go and find this thing that I want, right? Alternately, so we've established that there's this map. It's secured away in the library of scribes, right? In basically their most secure room, and the party got a copy of it through a series of unlikely hijinks, right? What does the map do? Why is it so valuable? And we've established that it's imprinted itself somehow on Havana's character, right? So somehow Avril has some sort of psychic imprint. So to me, like, what if the map was more than just a map? What if the map actually, like, the act of reading the map does something, right? Yeah, as James V points out, we could have some sort of like Narnia closet where you open the door and then you're in the ship. I'm not sure I want to give them that ready of an access to go back and forth to Waterdeep, back and forth to Waterdeep. That seems a little too convenient.
Well, I mean, it could go one way, right?
Yeah. So as FD Every points out, maybe you have to have the map imprinted in your mind to get into the ship. And I think that is honestly like a terrific answer. Like, that's why this map is so valuable and why you have to have an exact copy of it. And that opens up a whole bunch of other possibilities, right?
For those of you who are new, who have joined us through the Enthusiarmy, what are we talking about?
What are we talking about? Yeah, let's recap for everyone.
This is Disorganized Play, first of all, which is Tom's show where he goes and preps on Tuesday and then recaps on Thursday what happened during the Iron Keep Chronicles, which is our D&D 5e show on Wednesday
night. So Wednesday night we run D&D. Tuesdays you get a little behind-the-scenes glimpse into what I'm planning to have happen, like what I think the issues are that are coming up, or the plot points, or the struggles that are facing us in the upcoming episode. Wednesday night we actually play, and then Thursday I come back and Dom and I talk about if what I said on Tuesday was at all appropriate or whatever.
See you later, FD Every, or FDevry, or Fdevry.
And so the next adventure that we're going to tackle in the next arc of the Iron Keep Chronicles will be delving into Expedition to the Barrier Peaks.
Yes.
So that's what we've been discussing. If you want to come back, go rewind and watch the VOD or whatever, or you're planning to tune in tomorrow night.
If you are a new GM or even an old GM, you've got your experience under your belt, or you're just putting on your belt for the first time, this show is designed to answer your questions about GMing, especially about Dungeons and Dragons, but also about many other game systems. Tom and I have some experience with that, so if you have questions, please feel free to let us know. Otherwise, we're going to continue talking about how Tom is adapting Expedition to the Barrier Peaks from a AD&D system to current 5th edition. So 40 years of changes in everything by my count. I know you have a different count.
Over 73 years worth of adventuring to be had here. Yeah, so, and as Dom pointed out, if you have a question about something that's happening in your game or whatever, we can take a few minutes and address it. I'm happy to field something along those lines. I've been playing D&D for over 93 years. It's all fine. As well as other games. At any rate, so yeah, James V made an interesting point that, like, if this imprint is on Avril, then maybe that allows her to interact with the ship in ways that are interesting or unusual. And that's, another thing that's did not occur to somebody to most people back in 1980, right? Is the whole idea of like hacking, that there's some sort of like, net or whatever. Like hacking a computer was not something you really ran into a lot in 76 or in 80 in terms of something that was in the fiction that players would want to do, right? So, so I think it's a natural place for. Is the dog just like chowing down there?
Just chewing.
We have a very adorable pug underneath the table who's making a lot of noise.
More than the rain.
So I think that's another one of those elements that we need to, when we do this revision on this game and on this setting, we need to incorporate that there's going to be, like, there's something charming about how old school it is. Like, you go into the library and there's basically like little like microfilm slides that like zip back and forth and whatnot, right? But there's something charming about that, but I also feel like it needs to have some modern flourishes that the players are naturally going to want to try. Like as much as we talked about earlier that we want to put some things in place to keep the players from metagaming, whether it's altering our descriptions or having these kind of like mini games that help you fight, solve your way through a technology. As much as we want to do those things to keep the players from metagaming, you also want to reward the player's own natural metagaming impulses, right? Like the classic example that I always use is, wouldn't it be cool if we put the party on, I'm gonna turn my, sorry. Oh, all right. Wouldn't it be great if we put the party on a submarine? Okay, that's terrific, but the first question you have to ask yourself is, what are the cool things that there are to do on a submarine, and how can I make sure that my players get to do those things, right? Because I always say, like I was playtesting an adventure, and the author had written in there like, okay, so they go down to the dock, they get on a submarine, and then after 8 hours of travel, they arrive at the city of whatever. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
If I'm on a submarine, I want to look through the periscope. I want to make that ooga ooga noise. I want to yell dive, dive, and I want to fire torpedoes. I potentially want to fire myself out of the torpedoes. But like, if I don't get to do at least 2 of those 3 things, I don't want to be, why put them on a submarine? Just teleport them, because that's boring. And I think whenever you come up with an unusual setting like this, where this takes place inside of a spaceship or whatever, you have to ask yourself, okay, well, what are the cool things as a player? That's what I'm thinking to myself. What are the cool things that I can do inside a spaceship? Oh, okay, there's a computer. I don't know that it's a computer, but it's a computer. Okay, so there's got to be a way for me to hack this thing, right? Now, in all fairness to the game, there is no reason why a fantasy character in the world of Greyhawk or the Forgotten Realms would go, there must be a way for me to to use software to manipulate this computer to tell me what I want. It would be perfectly reasonable to go, I'm going to open the panel up and I'm going to move some wiring around and things like that. But we all know that's the best way to screw up a computer. It's not the best way to get what you want out of a computer, right? So, as the DM, you have a certain amount of authority to go, why would you know that? You're also asking kind of a game-stopping question, right? You're killing enthusiasm when you say, why would you know that? Because now the player has just been posed some metagame question that prevents them from getting what they want, from doing the cool thing that they want to do, right? And then they have to come up with some plausible reason. Oh, well, when I was in Waterdeep, I met a planeswalker who told me of this strange alternate world where knowledge is contained inside of ivory and glass boxes. And you're like, you're just making them work for the thing that they want to do. And ultimately, they don't feel like they're going to be judged fairly for it anyhow, since you called them out on the carpet, right? Now, there are ways of posing that question where you go, okay, well, why would you... What happened that your character knows this? In which case, that now all of a sudden you said, okay, I'm going to give you the green light. Just BS something that's reasonably plausible. And then their little story of, well, when I was traveling in Waterdeep, I met this planeswalker who spoke to me of that great length, and he gave me this ancient scroll which didn't make any sense. But now, upon inspection, whatever. So that's a very tricky thing, right? Is if you're going to put your characters into a fantastic location like this, or a fantastical location like this, you need to try and predict what are the cool things that they're naturally going to want to try. So that's one of your jobs as the GM, is what are the cool things that could happen here and how can I plausibly facilitate them? All right, so we've got a list of issues that we need to address. I think, honestly, like, we'll have tomorrow night's session in terms of what's going to happen will be a little bit of recap and getting everybody caught up on what happened literally a month ago in not in game time, but in physical time. We'll probably have some exploration of Ailerod's Tower since they've taken possession of it. Maybe a little bit of, Lady Laryl Silverhand, once again giving them kudos or whatever. So that's important. And then I think we need to have some play in terms of we need to have a role-playing scene where Xanathar shows up and lays some things on the line. And that from there somehow should be should lead us to, okay, well, let's do this mission that takes us to the Barrier Peaks. Alternately, they could discover either some information or some object within Ailerod's Tower that could help lead them there, right? And I think the final thing, just to note as we close out today's talk, is Ailerod the Ghost, or whatever he was, the wizard who lives, in non-contiguous time spans. I think he was a super fun and interesting character, and the players really seemed to enjoy talking to him and have some interaction with him. So I think he's an avenue to be sort of like exposition dump, If Xanathar says, I want this map, then maybe they ask Ailerod about this map, or maybe Ailerod says, you've discovered the map. My.
I have no idea.
I'll have to try and bring a big pipe for tomorrow night's session.
Hey, thanks, Thomas.
Thomas W. Young subbed up for 6 months. Let us know tomorrow night, who you want your reroll to go to, whether it's
tonight.
Tonight. Let's take a look at the calendar, everyone. Tonight at 7 o'clock?
8.
I thought for some reason it was earlier. Tonight at 8 o'clock, the swashbuckling world of Flash Gordon comes to life. DM extraordinaire Scott Woodard will be here with. Do you know? Or you must know. I don't know who's playing at the table.
I do know.
Okay.
I do know, Tom.
All right. Great.
So Scott Woodard is the writer and brand manager, I guess you could say, owner of the Flash Gordon setting for Savage Worlds, and so he is going to be running that session. This is going to be the first, as far as I know, first session of it on a stream at all. It's not even out yet. They just released the PDF to backers.
The Kickstarter just closed, I want to say 6 weeks ago, if that.
Yeah. So we're going to get to play it first, which I'm super excited about. Jordan Case Callerman, who is the GM for our Wild Cards, our Deadlands Reloaded Savage Worlds game, he will be playing in there. Then we got 3 fairly new players. People who... Well, no, I don't know. I can't even say that. But Jen Kretschmer, who came and joined Tom when we went through Xanathar's guide and checked that out, and also played in our Justice League Dark game that Michael Holmes ran during our Extra Life marathon. She will be playing with us. And then 2 folks people may or may not know, Allison Ashley Arm and Dylan Riley Snyder. They are... 2 people. Allison played in when we had the fun-sized horror people come by. She had a horror film that she had made, and they played Betrayal at House on the Hill. and she is joining us along with Dylan, and they've been doing things. She's going to be coming up in the new show AP Bio on, I think it's NBC. That has Glenn Howerton in it, and she's going to be in that show. She was on a bunch of Disney Channel stuff, so as has Dylan. So should be a lot of fun. New people at the table, new table. It will be the first game to really use this table, so I hope that you guys can tune in. It should be a lot of fun.
Cool. And tomorrow night, of course, Iron Keep Chronicles returns. It will be myself in the DM sweatbox here, along with Gaurav Galati of Vanna Mahoney, Megan Caves Callerman, and of course, Mr. Mostly Shit himself, Eric Reichert. Our all-star cast returns again tomorrow night. And then the next event that we have is on Sunday. Is that correct?
Yeah, Tempting Fate comes
is back.
Mm-hmm. Tempting Fate comes back with
GM Rick Budd.
Yep, Rick Budd and Gina DeVivo, Sam DeLev, and Max Isaacson, I believe, are going to be doing it on a regular basis. So they're going to be, you follow them throughout. Thank you so much, Blind Seer. Thanks for the bits.
Appreciate it.
That's awesome. And special guest Mia Rosella.
Dun, dun, dun. So that's our lineup for the week. We're kind of easing our way back into 2018 after a little kind of catch our breath break here over the holidays. But we've got so much. Oh, and of course, on Thursday at 2 o'clock, I will be back here along with Dom for more Disorganized Play, where we can talk about how this transition thing went. I really hope, as both BSB Care and Estelle Castillo have predicted, that it does not go 5 seconds of transitional, here's how to get on the quest, guys. Let's go do this thing.
I think the players are hoping that too.
Yeah, and that's, and a lot of that is just on me and trying to get things moving quicker. Like, I really have learned to, shorten things up, right? Try and get to the point quicker.
Yeah.
So that's the buzz. Thank you so much to everyone. I really appreciate all of your enthusiasm. There's so many different great ideas, some of which have occurred to me and some of which have not. I'm just buzzing back and forth. I'll have to go back and chat and take a look through and see what inspires me, what I can apply to the game. We've got we've got this session to transition into it, and then I think it'll be interesting to go through and start our adventure inside the ship. I don't remember if the ship is named or not. It's one of the things that I want to...
it's named the Barrier Peak.
The Barrier Peak, the SS Barrier Peak. Yeah.
If you guys have questions for Tom, you can hit him up on Twitter at Dungeon Bastard.
At Dungeon Bastard.
Or you can send messages to at Saving Throw Show, also on Twitter.
At Saving Throw Show.
Or join our Facebook or our Discord, either one, and shoot messages to us that way as well.
That's right. Very good. Thank you so much for your time, your passion, your bits, whatever kind of support you have decided to lend it, whether it is with your eyeballs or your wallet or your fingertips or both.
Tom.
So thank you to Farquaad and all of our mods who help keep our channel safe, friendly, and accessible. I hope to see you all tomorrow night here at 8 p.m. or stick around, come back and visit us tonight at 8 p.m. for the Flash Gordon game. In any case, until then...
hold on. We are going to raid Plate Mail Games.
We're going to raid Plate Mail Games. Wes Otis.
Wes is running his own
the man who runs our Call of Cthulhu Fate game here, starting up next Monday.
So here we go. Please join the raid and give him a roll your saving throw, and we will see you guys later. Okay, now you can do it.
Now let's dungeon!